Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, a very special edition of the Sandton Times Hour, and all will be revealed shortly. It's available on all leading digital audio channels, of course, so if you want to make your way there and subscribe, please do so. And also, if you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, connect on social media @Sandton Times, and hop onto www.sandtontimes.co.za for all possible types of reading that you could do. A very special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time. If you're in Sandton, Greater Johannesburg, Pretoria, Gauteng, across South Africa, anywhere and everywhere else in the world, online or on air, wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandtonland. And joining me once again has been Chenzo, making sure that everything sounds tip-top. As we embark on a very special edition of the show this week, it's the highest freestanding mountain in the world. It's the highest in Africa, and one of those adventures so many have wanted to embark on. Yes, Kilimanjaro has been a popular destination for many, and it is making a resurgence of late. And I've climbed this mountain twice myself, and I've gathered a very special group of guests this week to delve a bit deeper into this topic. So if you've ever had the desire to climb Kilimanjaro, or if you've just been happy sitting back and doing an armchair hike from where you are right now, well, you're welcome, you're invited, and I hope you find it equally as interesting. So, who are we going to be talking to in this hour on Kilimanjaro? Well, in a bit, I'll be chatting to one of the many tour operators offering expeditions to Kilimanjaro to find out the latest and also to find out all you need to know about this hike and give you an overview of what it takes to do it. And then I'll be catching up with two former colleagues who did the hike with me just over 10 years ago to share their impressions and experiences with you. So stay listening for that. All this and more coming up in the next hour.
Show some love.
subscribe, share,
Leave a review and rating for the Sandton Times Hour
on your favorite podcast app now.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So it's all about Mount Kilimanjaro this week, a dormant volcano in Tanzania, also bordering with Kenya, and it's the highest mountain in Africa, and certainly the highest single freestanding mountain above sea level in the world at 5,895 meters, unless it's gotten a little bit taller or a little bit shorter. I remember that number. Kilimanjaro has two very distinct rainy seasons, so March to May, and another one in around November, if you're thinking about going. But to get a little bit more insight into what it takes to do it and what you might have to bear in mind, I'm joined by Debbie Addison. She's the director at Africa Travel Specialists Wild Frontiers. And Wild Frontiers are the company that I've done Kilimanjaro with twice. So I'm glad to see that they're still going. And Debbie, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. It's nice to be here.
So, Debbie, to get things going, I mean, give us a bit of a sense of how popular Kilimanjaro is in 2024 as a bucket list experience for someone who's seeking sort of adventure in East Africa.
In the South African market, we're finding a sort of a renewed interest in Kili. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps it's just been talked about a little bit more than recently. Perhaps it's because the rand has strengthened a little, but it's definitely is a bucket list item. People who are, let's call it professional or sort of regular mountaineers and hikers, they sort of tick it off as one of the main summits to do. But it's something that I think is very achievable, but it's not easily achievable. And from that point of view, of course, it does mean that it's got that kind of appeal as something that once you've done it, it's really under the belt. And it's definitely picking up again in terms of interest level.
Well, what do you say sets Kilimanjaro apart from many other mountains? And I think you've touched on it a little bit already, just to say that it is accessible. You don't have to do any technical climbing. But there is something special about doing Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, gosh, that's a bit of a hard one, and I think it strikes different chords in different people. The accessibility is probably one of the key factors of the access for people to climb and succeed climbing. Tanzania is such a beautiful country. It's also something that you can add on to, say, an extra holiday like a safari or going to Zanzibar or something. So you're not just going there to hike. From a point of view of the mountain itself, there's a lot of different options to climb the mountain. So you've got a variety of different routes and conditions that you can enjoy. And it's very difficult to describe, but it's a very emotive experience. When you get to the top and you stand on the top and you go, wow, I actually am on the highest point in Africa. That's quite something. It's not like you just climbing a mountain. It's the mountain in Africa. So from that point of view, yes, it is relatively easy. There's nothing technical, but just that achievement when you get to the summit is quite amazing. Well, for me anyway. I climbed a long time ago, and it still strikes a chord when I start thinking about it. I still get quite emotional.
Well, I second that emotion, because the view from up there is absolutely spectacular. I mean, it's a view that you won't get anywhere else. And I do always feel that if you are African, if you are of Africa, it's one of those things that you just have to do, because you won't understand what it's like until you've done it. It's just sort of almost like an initiation into the continent. I don't know how else to describe it, but it is truly amazing. How do you set out deciding what's sort of the best route for people to take when they want to attempt this? I mean, is there sort of a standard set of routes that are recommended? I mean, I know, for example, like with places with Everest, there's a big concern that a lot of the routes have been overused and there's just too many people going up and it's becoming a bit too much. Has there been that sort of adjustment that's happened around Kilimanjaro, or is it still pretty manageable?
I'd say it's still pretty manageable. Some of the routes are more popular than others. One of the routes is hutted. In other words, you're sleeping in communal huts. So numbers are obviously strictly limited on that particular route. That's the Maranga route. The other routes are all camping options. And they have opened up a few more options to sort of take a bit of strain off the main routes. I think one of the more popular routes for, let's call it a generally fit person, would be, for example, Machami. It's ideally 5 nights on the mountain, or 6 nights on the mountain if you can, which allows for proper acclimatization. Other routes, I think one of the reasons that route is also popular, apart from the fact it's a nice steady walk, it does show sort of 2 sides of the mountain. You get to see it from the west and from the south during your walk. So you do see a little bit of different scenery, which is rather nice. Then other routes, which are slightly longer, coming in from the western side, Lemosho, Londerossi, Shira route. Those are all nice if you have extra time on the mountain and a few extra days, and they are definitely quieter on the first couple of days. And then coming in from the back, you've got the Rongai route, and there's also a circular route that's recently been opened, which also starts sort of more on the northern side of the mountain. In terms of difficulty, there are a couple of commercialized routes that are a little harder, so your ascent is faster. For example, Umbwe route. Umbwe is good for people who are sort of regular hikers, but for what we often see is a bit of a mixed bag. So somebody will say to their friends around the dinner table, hey, let's go climb Kili. And before they know it, they've got a group of 6 or 8 friends together, some of whom are regular hikers and some perhaps not so. And off they all go. So from that point of view, it's good to know who's climbing, what the capabilities and expectations are within the group, so that we can try and steer them to climb the sort of most suited option. Machami is definitely one of the more popular routes because of the fact that it's, I wouldn't say easy, none of them are easy, but it's a good steady hike and it's good acclimatization. So yeah.
Well, that's something to bear in mind, especially if you're going with your dinner party club. They might want to do Kilimanjaro. I mean, give that some good thought. I'm chatting to Debbie Addison, Director of African Travel Specialists Wild Frontiers, about climbing Kilimanjaro. If this is something that you've been thinking about or something that you've been mulling over, maybe this is your sign to take some action and put that plan into place. We're going to take a quick break and more of this conversation straight after the break. Stay right where you are.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So I'm picking up my conversation with Debbie Addison. She's the director at Wild Frontiers. They are an African travel specialist company with a whole bunch of expeditions and things that you can do around the continent. Today we're talking about Kilimanjaro specifically, and we're going to pick up on our conversation that we started just before that quick break. Debbie, the most important part about preparing yourself for Kilimanjaro is the training and getting yourself ready for what is about to come. Like you said, it's not ridiculously technical, but you are going to need to have some sort of level of fitness. What kind of recommendations do you make to people when it comes to sort of preparing yourself physically and mentally for this mountain?
Yeah, mentally is probably the key one when it comes to the very last day. Physically, you need to be able to be comfortable carrying a day pack weighing probably 8 or 10 kilos, because you'll be carrying your water, maybe camera, snacks, lunch, and that sort of thing on your back. Everything else gets taken up by a team of porters. So you're walking, probably 4 or 5 hours every day. So walking training is best for hiking. So if you can do some altitude training, particularly if I think we have an advantage if we're living in Gauteng in terms of the altitude. But if you come from the coast, then try and do a little bit of hiking up mountains and get used to that. Make sure your boots are completely broken in and very comfortable. So correct gear is crucial when you're climbing any mountain for that matter, or doing any hiking. But yeah, get into the habit of doing some good solid walks, consecutive days. As I say, carrying a day pack so you get used to that little bit of weight on your shoulders every day. Altitude, who knows how your body's going to react when you get to altitude. When you're climbing, you'll hear the mantra pole pole, which is slowly, slowly, from all the guides and porters. And the best way to tackle altitude is to walk slowly and steadily so that your body has time to acclimatize. Kili is very different to other mountains, which are typically in ranges, because you go up and you come down over a relatively short space of time. There's no way you could achieve this sort of level of altitude if you were in a range and had no quick access off. So the fact that your body is up and then back down again within a couple of days is quite critical in terms of your altitude mountain sickness adjustment. So yeah, that's quite an important factor. Train by hiking.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. I remember we did the Drakensberg quite a bit. On my first expedition, I had two fellow students from Namibia who struggled deeply because Namibia doesn't tend to have very high mountains. They started feeling it quite quickly. In terms of altitude sickness. There's also that great piece of advice: climb high, sleep low. So you'll find that the porters take you a little bit higher and then bring you back down again to sleep. I think that's some good piece of advice as well. And I think the other thing is also listening to the guides and to the porters who are on this, because they've done this so many times and they understand the lay of the land. And don't think that coming with your own ideas is going to get you up the mountain. And I want to touch on this with you. I mean, your guides and porters are unbelievably well trained. I mean, apart from the fact that they are just the most accommodating, hospitable people on the mountain. I mean, I probably had better meals on the mountain than I had in many other places in and around Tanzania and Zanzibar afterwards. It is incredible what they do and how they do it.
Yeah, they're an amazing team. So the guides are all qualified through national parks. They have to renew their license every year. When they start climbing, they'll be assistant guides for X amount of years until that they are suitably experienced to be able to guide their own groups. And then there will obviously be other assistant guides coming up through the ranks. So when you do climb, you'll have one guide who's in charge, and then you'll have 2 or 3, depending on the group size, assistant guides traveling with you. I mean, one must remember that guides are also human. And whilst they don't get sick very often, if somebody gets sick, it's critical that you've got a second guide on the mountain with you. We're always equipped with spare, if that's the right word, spare guides, even if it's just one client climbing on their own. Porters as well, as you've no doubt seen, they carry an amount of items, not just your luggage, but all the equipment to take up the mountain, from foods to camping equipment. Everything gets carried up, everything gets taken down again. They're incredible. They'll come scoopering past with all these things on their heads and in their arms, and they'll overtake you, and you'll be puffing and panting away, and you just look at these chaps and they're just machines. They're unbelievable. But as I say, we also need to recognize the fact that the people there are also human, and sometimes they may also get a little bit sick from altitude. So that's why we have so many sort of reserves in place for that eventuality.
And what's also quite amazing is the camaraderie. I mean, even at night, there's also a bit of a medical that you do. I mean, it was the first time I'd seen a pulse oximeter or oximeter, or however you want to pronounce it. We became very familiar with that during COVID. I think everyone and anyone owned their own one. But on Kilimanjaro, you will see the return of this device to check that you're in good nick. And they will make recommendations and say, look, you know what? If you're not feeling like it, let me tell you, altitude sickness is not for the faint-hearted. They will say, look, I think at this point, it's maybe good for you to return or to call it a day. And it's heartbreaking when you've gone so far and made the investment and all of that. But as I experienced on my first expedition, we did have a fatality in another group ahead of us. A 45-year-old gentleman who unfortunately had a bit of a, I think it was a cardiovascular breakdown or something, but he didn't make it. And it's difficult to get off that mountain afterwards because you can't land a helicopter at summit. It is I think the air is too thin. I must say that summit evening is quite a daunting experience because, it's 6 hours one way, 6 hours the other way. Whichever way you go, you're going to be there for a while.
Yeah. And that's why acclimatizing correctly is crucial, and being honest with your guide. And if you're climbing with friends, sort of pick a buddy and be honest with each other. If you're not feeling good, if you're getting headaches and your headaches are starting to get stronger, or worse, if you're feeling nauseous, all of those things, you have to be honest with yourself and your guide. Yes, they will make a recommendation to take you down. And as you've just pointed out, there are fatalities on Kili. Unfortunately, it's not common, but it does happen. And each circumstance is different to the next, but we like to bring everybody back. So it's crucial that you listen to. It's a very high mountain. It's 6,000 meters high. You can't just take it too lightly. It's a very serious thing. And as you say, that last night, when you're climbing up in the middle of the night to the summit, it's about 1 kilometer, that last section, virtually going straight up. That's when you really start to feel the altitude. And if you haven't behaved yourself on the prior days and listened to the guide and gone slowly and all these good things and drank lots of fluid, etc., you may struggle that night. So it's really important. The guides do know what they're doing. And as I said earlier, Kili is an equalizer. It doesn't matter from which walk of life you are, what age you are, how fit you are, it equalizes all of us and it humbles us all. And I think that's something that I came back from climbing Kili all those years ago. It's very humbling.
Absolutely.
And so are the people up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would quickly touch on pricing and packaging before I let you go. You mentioned you've got where you've taken individuals up, and you've also got situations where you've gone in groups. Maybe you can give us a brief overview of where people can go to get some more information.
Absolutely. Well, of course, we do have a website, which is wildfrontiers.com. And on there, you'll pick up a reservations email address. But just to give you an indication, and I'm sorry, I'm going to give you an idea in dollars because the rand is a little bit up and down. But you're probably looking for 2 to 5 guests traveling together in the region of approximately $2,000. Almost half of that is your park and camping fees. So a big chunk of that money is going to the parks.
That's $2,000 per person, yeah.
Plus minus. It depends on the route and how many days you're going to spend up there. Of course, then you've still got to add your flights on. That also includes a night at a fairly basic hotel before and after your climb, which we can upgrade if people want to stay somewhere a little bit nicer. Yeah, that's your sort of pricing category. And then, of course, there's tips on top of that, which will depend on the group size as to the tipping amounts.
Well, I think that's been a great overview of what to expect if you have Kilimanjaro on your bucket list. Debbie Addison, director at Wild Frontiers, providing us with an overview of making this expedition happen. And Debbie, it's been so great having you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
And as we get into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, don't forget that if you caught something intriguing during the show this week, especially around Kilimanjaro, and didn't get the details, can't remember what we spoke about, who we spoke to, go onto the website, sandtontimes.co.za, and you can check out the show notes, and we'll put some links up there and some further reading, and you got all the details there. So you can listen in peace without having to worry about taking down details. And of course, you can also follow the Sandton Times on social media, whatever your preferred platform is, at Sandton Times. Right, much like the Avengers, I've assembled some guests for the second half of our special look at climbing Kilimanjaro. And not just any guests, but some expedition mates from our climb in 2013, which is well over 10 years ago. And they're going to provide some first-hand perspective, and they're going to indulge a bit of a walk up the mountain or down memory lane, however you want it. And joining me on the line is Natascha Jacobsz, all the way from the Netherlands. And Natascha, good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks, Alex. And luckily there's no time difference, so we're happy to be here.
Brilliant. And right back here at home is my other climbing mate, Kudzai, Kanyangarara.
How's it, Alex? It's really good to see you.
Fantastic, Kudzai. Well, Natascha and Kudzai, it's good to have you both here. And maybe as we kick things off, Natascha, let's chat about what inspired you to take the challenge of climbing Kilimanjaro.
I don't know if it's inspired or if I felt that I didn't have a choice. Our fearless leader, the founder of CNBC Africa, Rakesh Wahi, put out the call to action to senior and middle management at CNBC back in the day. And we had a nice long conversation about it. I always say I'm a self-proclaimed couch potato. So it's not really something I ever saw myself doing. People have a bucket list. It was probably on my anti-bucket list. But something in me just said, you know what, do it. And I did. And I don't regret it for a moment, even 11 years later.
Well, Natascha, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, we were all working in Africa Business News together, and there were about 20 of us. Obviously, there's only 3 of us right now because it would have been absolute chaos having everybody here at the same time. But Kudzai, you were with us as well. And how did you get roped in to do this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was one of those, as Tash said, it was one of those moments where you were kind of asked politely to join the expedition. And at the time, I'd never thought of doing a Kili or anything adventurous of that nature. And to be honest, I didn't take too long to think about it. I was like, yeah, well, let's go ahead, let's give this thing a try. What's the worst that can happen? You'll climb a mountain and you'll come back. And to just reiterate what Natascha said, it was absolutely incredible. I think it's still one of the most exciting things I've ever done, and I tell anybody who's got more than 5 minutes to listen about it.
Kudzai, both you and I are not necessarily candidates for Ironman, so we are not always, climbing mountains at the best of days. How did you prepare for what was to come?
I think it took a lot of mental preparation more than most. I watched a lot of YouTube videos at first. I spoke to a few other people that had done it and kind of got their thoughts. Training wise, to your point, I am not about to run 100 meters in 25 minutes at all, but a lot of walking, which was great. We did a lot of group hikes as a team, and I think our philosophy around leave no man behind really helped us get across the threshold, because we had no clue what we were getting into. We were like, are we going to run this mountain? Are we going to climb? Are we going to hike? So a bit of research behind that, and I think the tour operator was fantastic in kind of just alleviating our fears and guiding us as to what to expect. I know I really enjoyed us. I think we did 3 or 4 hikes leading up to Kili, of varying natures and difficulty. I mean, we started off, in Jacobsz River, just up the road here by Hartbeespoort Dam. Did Jacobsz, ran Jacobsz. It was very cool, very flat, very hot, and then culminating in the amphitheater hike, in the Drakensberg, to kind of help us understand how do we walk together, which position is best, and then literally kind of how do we leverage off each other's expertise and experiences while still walking the trail. But you know what? To tell you frankly, Alex, nothing prepares you for when you get to the bottom of that mountain or walk into that park and they say, go. We'll see you in 7 days. But it was absolutely worth it. It was fantastic.
Well, listen, I mean, the leadership's military background also did help quite a bit in terms of sorting us out, getting a bit of a buddy system going, sort of maybe putting the slowest person in the front so everybody else sort of matches up with their speed. Natascha, what did you find sort of physically and mentally most challenging about, as Kudzai described, getting to the bottom of that mountain and then having to endure hours of walking, for almost a week?
I think for me, it was not the physical, but the mental exhaustion that we faced and the mental preparation. I always say to people, Kilimanjaro is not a technical hike. some people sometimes confuse. They're like, oh, you did an Everest kind of climb. I'm like, no ropes involved, no dangerous ravines, but just very slow and steady pace. But I think the biggest thing for me was obviously the mental strain it took. We'd walk a little bit up the mountain when we got to our goalpost for the day, and we had to come down again when the temperatures started to plummet. And then just preparing for summit night, I think, when you explain to people that you wake up at 11 o'clock at night and it's pitch dark and you can't see anything in front of you except the light of your lamp on the boots in the person in front of you, and it goes down to the minuses, that mental preparation and going through those mental barriers, for me, that was far more daunting than any physical task. And I mean, I was 28, I'm 40 now when we went up that mountain. But I think just the mental strain that you took day by day as you prep closer to summit point.
Did you have any moments? Did you have any moments of doubt during the climb that you thought, well, you know what, I've gotten this far and no further?
I don't know if you guys can remember summit night that I got sick.
Yes.
Without oversharing, I got a stomach bug, which was probably inevitable after not bathing for 7 days and eating all sorts of weird and wonderful things, very beautifully and lovingly prepared for us. But I woke up with a serious stomach bug, and thank goodness I went to see the pharmacist before we went. So he had given me proper schedule 3 or 4 antibiotics. But I was just like praying those first few hours and then disappearing from the group to go hide behind a rock for a few minutes. So for me, that was definitely at about, I think, 4 a.m. that morning. I thought, if this does not stop now, if I have to make one more trip behind a boulder, I'm done. And somehow it stopped. And by the grace of the gods, and also by my support, by my wonderful guide, Freddie, I made it through those last few hours. And the rest is history, they say. Well,
it's certainly one of the worst places to possibly have any sort of things like stomach bugs or feeling nauseous or whatever, on top of everything else that you're dealing with. Kudzai, did you have any moments where you doubted yourself and you thought, no, I think this is good enough for me?
I think we all had a moment out of all 18 of us who were there. My moment was after the sun rose on summit morning, and I was walking and the air got really, really thin, and we'd just gotten underneath the bowl. I forgot what it's called, like right at the top.
Gilman's Point.
Gilman's Point, that's exactly it. We were just under there. I could see it, but for some reason, I just ran out of air and I couldn't catch my breath, and I started to hyperventilate, and I had to stop. And Quentin came to me and said, "You okay?" And I said, "I don't think so. I think I can't breathe." And he said, "Okay, just stop breathing." And I couldn't catch my breath. And eventually, I think after maybe 10 minutes, and by this time, Sam wasn't feeling so great, so she ran off. It was one of our other climbing mates. She ran off in front of us, and I eventually dropped from, I think I was walking number 2 at the time, to the back of the queue, and Quentin settled me down, and eventually I caught my breath, and then I could, because at that moment I thought, okay, this is tickets. I can't do it anymore. I'm going to go back down. And for the listeners who've never climbed to altitude, the lower you get, the more I think the stronger you feel, because the quality of the oxygen in the air is a lot better. So at that point, Quentin just looked at me and said, "Here's a teaspoon of cement, and let's go." And then kudos to him, he got me to Gilman's Point, and from then it was fantastic.
Well, if you're listening right now, we're chatting about Kilimanjaro. I'm catching up with some former work colleagues who went up Kilimanjaro with me almost 10 years ago, Kudzai, Kanyangarara, and Natascha Jacobsz. Stay right where we are. We're going to take a quick break, and more with Natascha and Kudzai right after this.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
Natascha Jacobsz joins me all the way from the Netherlands, and Kudzai Kanyangarara as well in Johannesburg, and we're talking about Kilimanjaro, an expedition that we went on just over 10 years ago with about 20 of us. We were all work colleagues, and we were conscripted, or I don't know what the word is, to go up this mountain. Some of us knowing what we were going into, some of us didn't know what we were going into. But there was one song that kept us on our way, and it's a song called Jambo Bwana. And I found a great version of it by a gentleman called Charvak Karpe on YouTube. And I'm just going to play you a little clip of that.
Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kilimanjaro, hakuna matata, 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 hakuna matata.
And what a great memory that is, listening to that. And that brings back some great memories. And I want to ask Natascha, what was one of your favorite moments or memories going up Kilimanjaro?
You know, Alex, it's great that you played that song because we had a moment where we had a sing-off with all of the staff and the guides that took us up that mountain, and they taught us the song, and we were singing, thanks to Kudzai, I think a lot of Disney songs as well. And funny enough, I had the privilege of traveling to Kenya last year, August, for my work. And in the restaurant, the staff and the waiters started to sing the song as part of a happy birthday song to one of the guests. And lo and behold, I started bawling like a baby that my colleagues went, what's going on? And I said, you know what, it's such a visceral experience, that song, because it brought me right back to that mountain. I was close to the border of Tanzania again, so I literally saw Kili every day while I was there. But I think that moment where we were singing and just singing in Swahili and to each other, that's, again, something I will never forget.
Yeah, there's certainly certain elements that are quite triggering and that bring back some very visceral memories. Kudzai, what did you learn about yourself, having experienced all of this and gone up and been able to come down again?
You know, it was such a life-changing experience for me. And what Kili did, I think, for my own self-worth was really position and help me understand what I'm capable of. And I mean, I said this in the interview that we did for the channel after we got back. It wasn't a question of whether I believed in myself to not do something or do something, but it was in the midst of adversity and physical adversity that I could do anything, literally anything. And there's certain things that I think resonated very well with me. One was some of the militant leadership that we got. And it's a militant leadership, not in a bad way, but it's just in the structure and the process of getting there. And I want to touch on that as when I come back to it. But it was also like the mantra of Kilimanjaro, to anyone who's done it, is pole pole, right? So slowly, slowly. It's one foot in front of the other, and I guarantee you will get there. Right. And that was it. I mean, to your point earlier, it was like, I'd never thought that I'd ever be able to do something like this. And I remember when we were asked politely to join the thing, we all had our, I don't know. I think I had a conversation with Natascha about this, and she was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I can't do this. It's not what I'm about. And I think, we kind of sat down and we decided, is this something that we really want to try? And said, yes, absolutely. Let's give it a shot. And of course, we were all nervous, but the strength and the ability of what your mind can do when put under pressure and put in an uncomfortable environment is incredible. And for me, being a city slicker boy, to go out in the middle of nowhere and conquer Africa's tallest mountain is something that will stick with me forever.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the mental element cannot be understated. It is definitely right up there with the physical. Natascha, what advice do you have for someone that might be considering Kilimanjaro in the not so distant future?
Think twice. No, I think I don't think anybody sane considers doing this. So I think anybody who's contemplating probably is up for a crazy adventure. As Kudzai says, you can do all the physical preparations. I joined a gym, which I thought I never would, in preparation just to do the cardio and doing the hikes. But I think just go with an open mind. I I want to repeat what Kudzai said about just, the mental strength that you learn. But something the mountain taught me, and I hope people are open to this, is humility. Because the moment we started, I think, in the marshlands, and we had all these little school children who joined us at some point. And these are kids who go up and down that mountain every day just to get to school. And we're there in our fancy rain gear and our, I don't know how many 100 Rand boots. And
Absolutely.
These children just go up and down every day. And just the guides and the porters who got us up that mountain, these guys do it once a week, twice a week. Taking tourists with their money and their dollar bills up. And and they do it with a smile. So I just think, if you're going to do this adventure, just be open to the humility and the life lessons of the mountain.
Absolutely. Kudzai, you were nodding in agreement there. That was also something, obviously, that stuck with you.
No, 100%. I mean, you come in there as a tourist and you've got all the gear and no idea, as we say, right? And some of the porters and Sherpas would wake up early and will do maybe 20 kilometers in that day, and they would have to pack up camp, walk past us at a pace, go set up camp before we even got there. And by the time we got there, we're like, oh my goodness, that was so difficult. I couldn't breathe. I've got a headache. But this person has sat there with your tent, your food, their stuff, cook for you, clean for you as much as they possibly can to make it as comfortable as possible. And to Natascha's point, they do this every day of their lives. Okay. And I think it's something that you need to really grasp it and understand that this is the livelihoods of other people, and they live it and they experience it. So be grateful for when you're there. Take it all in. Every step, every rock, every mouse, every, excuse my French, poop rock, that you had to go and pass on. And I think it's a wonderful experience, and I would generally encourage anyone to do it if you can, and don't be shy about it, and love it.
Well, certainly a word of encouragement, and Natascha Jacobsz all the way there from the Netherlands, Kudzai Kanyangarara right here back home. It's been so great catching up with both of you and chatting about Kilimanjaro.
Thanks, Alex. It's really great to have you.
Thanks, Alex. Great seeing you guys.
Well, let's leave it right there for the hour this week. What an interesting conversation it has been on Kilimanjaro. And as always, if you want to get in touch with the Sandton Times Hour, you can do so by emailing editor@sandtontimes.co.za, connecting on social media @Sandton Times, and visiting the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And if you found this interesting, there's more interesting content in the archives on the podcast. So hop onto your favorite digital audio platform, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Podcast Party, AfriPods, you name it, and subscribe, and you can listen to some previous shows and, of course, be up to speed on any new shows that are coming out as and when they happen. Thank you to the team, and thank you to the guests who made time to be on the show this week. And, of course, thank you to you for listening, and let's do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.